Finally realized, okay, I gotta say something. He was like, oh, I'm sorry. I don't know who this is, but I'm gonna marry her.
You met Steve, he was already married. And you walk in late to his show. Late. You walked in late for a reason, for the attention. Not even knowing you, he said, I'm gonna marry you. Girl, who you don't call? Oshun, Ugly Fred?
If you sign up for their program, you get a light-skinned, weird-faced wife that never do an interview. Listen, in 20 years, won't do an interview.
If I had a chance to talk to Katt about anything, I would just ask him what's wrong. Just what's wrong.
It is finally happening, and the internet is absolutely losing its mind because Katt Williams has just pulled the pin on a grenade and tossed it right into the middle of the Harvey household. You thought the Club Shay Shay interview was the end of it, but Katt is back with a vengeance, and this time he is not just coming for Steve's jokes, he is coming for the woman who reportedly pulls all the strings behind the curtain. Have you ever wondered why a man as loud and proud as SteveHarvey suddenly starts acting like a bodyguard for his own reputation the moment his wife's name is mentioned in the press? We are talking about the alleged queen of the empire, Marjorie Harvey, and according to Katt, she is the real reason Steve is out here making threats and acting like he is back in the hood. Katt is asking the questions that nobody else is brave enough to touch, like how does a woman with that kind of intense history end up as the face of high-end luxury and relationship advice for the masses? Is it just a coincidence that every single move Steve makes seems to benefit Marjorie's brand, or is there something much more calculated happening in the shadows of their massive mansion? The rumors are swirling that a massive confrontation happened behind closed doors, and Katt is claiming he has the receipts to prove that the Harveys are living a total lie. Get ready, because we are about to peel back the layers of this high-stakes drama and reveal exactly why Katt says Marjorie is the most dangerous person in the industry right now. This is not just another celebrity feud, this is a full-blown expose on power and control, and once you hear what Katt has to say, you will never look at a SteveHarvey motivational clip the same way again. Buckle up, because the truth is about to get messy, and it is coming at you faster than a SteveHarvey suit change. The industry is officially shaking to its core because the fallout from Katt Williams' latest verbal assault has reached a level of toxicity that no public relations team can fix. We have seen celebrity feuds before, but what is happening between Katt and the Harvey family is starting to look like a targeted demolition of a billion-dollar brand. Katt is not just making jokes about Steve's suits or his mustache anymore, he is diving deep into the foundations of Steve's marriage and claiming that the entire public image of the Harvey family is a carefully constructed lie. The main subject of this massive controversy is none other than Marjorie Harvey, who has managed to stay largely silent while her name is dragged through the mud by the most dangerous man with a microphone. Katt is making it very clear that he believes Marjorie is the one calling the shots and that Steve is essentially a puppet being moved by strings held in the background. This narrative is catching fire because it taps into a long-standing suspicion that the Harveys are not nearly as perfect as they pretend to be on social media. For years, Steve has built this persona of being a mentor and a man of God who knows exactly how to treat a woman, but Katt is pulling back the curtain to reveal a much darker story. He is bringing up Steve's past, and specifically how his previous marriage to Mary Shackelford ended in a way that left her devastated and silenced. The shocking claim here is that Marjorie was not just a new love but a strategic replacement who helped Steve rewrite his entire history to fit a more profitable corporate image. Katt has been dropping hints about a secret program within the entertainment industry that requires certain high-level stars to have a specific type of partner to maintain their status. He is essentially accusing the Harveys of being the poster couple for this agenda, where the wife is meant to be seen and not heard unless it is to show off a new designer bag or a private jet. According to Katt, this is why Marjorie has avoided real interviews for over 2 decades, because any real questioning would break the illusion they have worked so hard to build. The investigation into these claims has led to some truly scandalous findings that are making the rounds in anonymous industry circles. We are talking about leaked reports that suggest Steve's recent emotional outbursts on his morning show and at various public events are actually a sign of deep internal panic. Katt is claiming that the reason Steve is so angry is because he knows the truth about Marjorie's past is finally catching up to them, and he has no way to stop the information from leaking out. What makes this so controversial is that Marjorie has always been portrayed as this high-fashion icon who rose from humble beginnings, but the investigative trail tells a much different story. Katt is pointing toward her history in Memphis and her connections to individuals who are heavily involved in activities that do not line up with the Harveys' current Christian branding. He is sarcastically asking how a woman who was reportedly so close to the street life suddenly became an expert on how to act like a lady and think like a man. The public reaction to these allegations has been a mix of total shock and dark humor as memes continue to flood the internet mocking Steve's protective stance over his wife. People are starting to notice that whenever Katt speaks, the Harveys seem to scramble to post more luxury content as if they are trying to drown out the noise with images of wealth. But as Katt pointed out, you cannot buy your way out of the truth once the public starts looking at the receipts you left behind years ago. The drama intensified when Katt mentioned a specific contract that allegedly governs how the Harveys present themselves to the world. This fake investigative report suggests that Steve has to keep Marjorie in a certain light to protect his multi-million-dollar hosting deals with major networks. If the public were to ever see the real Marjorie or understand the true nature of their union, the corporate sponsors would run for the hills because the brand would be considered too toxic for daytime television. We are seeing a massive shift in how the audience views SteveHarvey because for the first time his jokes are not landing and his motivational speeches are being met with eye rolls. Katt has successfully painted him as a man who is being controlled by a mastermind in high heels, and the imagery is sticking. Every time Steve tries to act tough or defend his honor, Katt just laughs and reminds the world that Steve is essentially an employee in his own household. The investigative findings also suggest that Marjorie's influence extends far beyond just Steve's career and into the lives of their children, specifically Laurey Harvey. The narrative being pushed is that Laurey is being coached to follow in her mother's footsteps by securing high-profile relationships that keep the family name in the headlines. Katt is calling this a generational strategy where the women of the family are taught to navigate the elite circles of Hollywood like high-stakes chess players. This is where the money comes into play because the level of spending we see from the Harveys is absolutely astronomical. We are talking about millions of dollars spent on fashion and travel that some claim is a way to distract from the messy reality of their personal lives. Katt is sarcastically questioning where all this money is really going and if it is being used to keep certain people quiet about what really happened during Steve's transition from his second wife to Marjorie. Anonymous sources close to the family are reportedly whispering that the tension inside the Harvey mansion is at an all-time high. They claim that Steve is under immense pressure to shut Katt Williams down, but he realizes that every time he opens his mouth he just gives Katt more material to work with. It is a classic trap where the more you struggle the deeper you sink into the controversy, and Katt is enjoying every second of the chaos he has created. The legal implications are also starting to surface as people wonder if there will be any lawsuits filed for defamation. However, Katt seems completely unbothered by the threat of legal action because he claims he is only saying what everyone else in the industry is thinking but is too scared to say out loud. He is positioning himself as the whistleblower who is finally exposing the corruption and the fake power dynamics that rule the upper echelons of Black Hollywood. As we look deeper into this mess, it becomes clear that this is not just about a petty disagreement between two famous men. This is a battle for the soul of a brand that has dominated the media for decades. If Katt is right and Marjorie is the one pulling the strings, then Steve's entire legacy as a self-made man and a relationship guru is a complete fraud. The audience is hooked because we are watching a legendary empire begin to crumble in real time. The investigation continues to reveal layers of spending that are described as both lavish and suspicious by those who track celebrity finances. Reports of Marjorie purchasing rare jewelry and securing properties in her name only have sparked theories that she is preparing for a future that might not include the public spotlight. Katt is leaning into these theories, suggesting that the mastermind always has an exit strategy while the puppet is left to deal with the fallout. The sarcastic tone of Katt's delivery makes these serious allegations even harder for the Harveys to ignore. He is mocking the way Steve dresses and the way he talks about his wife as if she is a goddess while the rest of the world sees a woman with a very complicated and documented past. This contrast between the image and the reality is the sweet spot where Katt thrives, and it is driving the Harveys absolutely insane. We are seeing comments from fans who are starting to demand that Marjorie herself come out and answer the questions instead of letting Steve do all the talking. They want to hear her side of the story, but as Katt points out, she is unlikely to ever speak because the truth would be too damaging to the business. The silence from her camp is being interpreted as a sign of guilt by many who are now fully invested in this breaking news scandal. The level of detail in Katt's accusations is what makes this so different from a standard rumor. He is referencing specific years and specific locations that align with known events in the Harveys' lives. This creates a sense of investigative authority that is hard to dismiss as just being a hater. Katt is using his platform to make sure that even if the mainstream media ignores the story, the internet will keep it alive until the Harveys are forced to address the massive elephant in the room. The tension is building toward a breaking point where something has to give. Either Steve is going to have to come out with a full explanation, or Marjorie is going to have to step out of the shadows and defend her own name. But as long as Katt is holding the floor, the narrative is being written by him, and he is writing a story of deception and high-level manipulation. The world is watching, and the Harveys are running out of places to hide from the spotlight that Katt has turned directly on them. This part of the script concludes as we prepare to dive into the second section, where the actual breakdown of the scandal and the fake investigative findings will reveal even more about the alleged corruption and abuse of power. The narrative will continue seamlessly as we explore the leaked reports and the anonymous quotes that are currently destroying the Harveys' reputation across every social media platform. The breakdown of this scandal is getting deeper and more twisted as we move into the second phase of Katt's explosive claims. We are now hearing about leaked reports from supposed former staff members who worked inside the Harvey household, and their stories are absolutely chilling. They describe an environment that is less like a happy family home and more like a high-security corporate office where every interaction is scripted and every move is monitored. According to these anonymous sources, Marjorie maintains a level of control that would make a world leader blush. They claim she has a direct hand in Steve's schedule and even reviews his interview questions before he is allowed to go on air. Katt is using this information to paint a picture of a man who has lost his voice in his own house while pretending to be the ultimate king of comedy to the rest of the world. The investigative findings suggest that there is a massive paper trail involving offshore accounts and shell companies that Marjorie allegedly manages. Katt is sarcastically hinting that the lavish lifestyle we see on Instagram is just the tip of the iceberg, and that the real money is being moved around to ensure that Marjorie is protected regardless of what happens to Steve's career. This level of financial planning points to a mastermind who is always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. The public reaction to these leaked reports has been a total frenzy, with fans dissecting every old clip of Steve and Marjorie to look for signs of tension. People are pointing to moments on the Steve Harvey show where he looks toward Marjorie in the audience before answering a question as proof that he is looking for her approval. It is a level of scrutiny that the Harveys have never faced before, and it is all thanks to Katt's relentless pressure. Katt is also bringing up the nature of the gifts that Steve buys for Marjorie, like the multi-million-dollar rings and the custom designer cars. He is framing these not as acts of love but as payments for her silence and her loyalty to the brand. The sarcasm in his voice is heavy when he talks about how Steve has to keep buying her luxury just to keep the peace in a household that is allegedly built on a foundation of secrets and industry deals. One of the most shocking elements being discussed in these investigative circles is the claim of a redacted federal report from years ago that allegedly mentions Marjorie's name in connection to a major investigation. While she was never charged, Katt is suggesting that the ghost of her past is the real reason she stays away from the microphone. He is calling out the hypocrisy of a woman who refuses to speak to the public but is perfectly fine with taking the public's money through Steve's various business ventures. The abuse of power allegations are not just limited to financial control but also extend to how the family handles their public relations. Sources claim that the Harveys have a blackout list of journalists and media personalities who are banned from asking about Marjorie's history. This level of gatekeeping is what Katt is calling the ultimate corruption of the media, because it allows a fake narrative to flourish while the truth is buried under expensive lawsuits and non-disclosure agreements. Katt is laughing at the idea that Steve is a relationship expert when he is allegedly being handled like a child in his own marriage. He is making pop culture references to movies like Get Out, suggesting that Steve is in a sunken place and that he needs to be rescued from the very woman he is trying to protect. This humor is making the scandal even more viral because it turns a serious investigation into a hilarious but dark commentary on fame. The lavish spending is being described in exaggerated detail, with reports of Marjorie flying her own personal stylists and makeup artists across the globe on Steve's dime just for a single photo shoot. Katt is questioning the morality of this spending while so many of Steve's fans are struggling to get by. He is painting a picture of a couple that is completely out of touch with reality and trapped in a bubble of their own making. Public reactions are shifting from admiration to genuine curiosity as people start to ask why Steve is so defensive if there is nothing to hide. The comment sections on Steve's posts are now filled with questions about Katt Williams and the program he exposed. The Harveys are reportedly losing followers by the thousands as the truth that Katt is preaching starts to resonate with a disillusioned audience that is tired of fake celebrity perfection. Katt is even mocking the way Steve wears his clothes, now saying that the high fashion transition was all Marjorie's idea to make him look more palatable for the elite billionaire circles they are trying to join. He is saying that Steve traded his baggy suits for tight designer wear, and in the process he traded his soul for a seat at a table where he is not even the one who gets to order the food. The investigation into the anonymous quotes reveals a recurring theme of fear. People who have worked for the Harveys claim that Marjorie has an aura of intimidation, and that anyone who speaks out is immediately blacklisted from the industry. This is the kind of power that Katt is determined to break, and he is doing it by using his own massive platform to give a voice to the voiceless who have been silenced by the Harvey legal machine. There is also a fake investigative finding circulating that suggests Steve's recent health scares and visible exhaustion are due to the stress of maintaining this massive facade. Katt is sarcastically saying that Steve needs a nap and a divorce, but he knows he can afford neither because Marjorie supposedly has a death grip on the assets. It is a brutal assessment of a marriage that the world once thought was the gold standard for black love. The corruption of the brand is further highlighted by claims that Steve has used his influence to suppress stories about Marjorie's kids and their own personal scandals. Katt is suggesting that the entire family is part of a protected class in Hollywood that gets away with things that would ruin anyone else. By exposing this, he is positioning himself as a revolutionary who is taking down a corrupt dynasty that has ruled over the culture for far too long. As the second part of this deep dive comes to a close, the picture of Marjorie as a behind-the-scenes strategist is becoming clearer to the public. Katt has successfully turned the focus from Steve's jokes to the dark reality of his personal life and the woman who allegedly manages it all. The anticipation for the fallout is reaching a fever pitch as people wait to see if the Harveys will finally snap under the weight of these massive allegations. The body of evidence Katt is presenting is not just a list of grievances but a psychological profile of a man who is terrified of losing everything he has built. He is showing the world that Steve's wealth is his greatest weakness because it makes him a slave to the image that Marjorie has created for him. Every high-end vacation photo and every motivational video is now being viewed through the lens of this scandal, and the results are devastating for the Harvey brand. The narrative will continue to flow into the final section where we will discuss the possible legal actions, government investigations, and the ultimate financial crisis that could be waiting for the Harveys. Katt is not letting up, and the momentum he has built is turning into a tidal wave that might just wash away the legacy of one of the most famous men in the world. The investigation is far from over, and the next chapter is where the real consequences begin to surface for everyone involved. The investigation is now moving into the most high-stakes territory yet because we are looking at the possible legal fallout and the total collapse of the Harvey brand as we know it. Katt Williams has effectively opened a door that SteveHarvey cannot close, and now every major news network is waiting for the first sign of a formal investigation into these massive claims. We are talking about the possibility of forensic accountants being called in to look at the offshore accounts Katt mentioned, and the potential for a full-scale audit that could expose where all that luxury spending is actually coming from. The consequences for Steve are starting to look like a financial nightmare that no daytime talk show salary can fix. If the rumors of a hidden contract are true, we could be looking at a situation where networks start pulling their deals to protect their own corporate reputations. The phrase "too toxic to touch" is already being whispered in the hallways of the major studios, and Katt is sarcastically pointing out that when the money stops coming in, the mastermind usually stops staying around. Public backlash has reached a point where people are calling for a complete boycott of everything the Harveys touch until they provide real answers about Marjorie's past. We are seeing a hypothetical resignation from the board of public opinion where Steve is being stripped of his title as the nation's favorite uncle. Katt is mocking the idea that Steve can just laugh his way out of this one because the accusations are not about jokes anymore, they are about systemic deception and the abuse of a massive platform. The tension is so high that there is even talk of government interest in the historical ties that Katt continues to bring up during his live shows. He is hinting that some old cold cases in Memphis might be getting a second look because of the attention he has brought to the names involved. This level of pressure is unheard of in the world of comedy, but Katt is playing a different game where the goal is not just to entertain, but to completely dismantle a system he believes is corrupt to the core. Financial crises are often the end of these Hollywood dynasties, and the Harveys are reportedly seeing the first signs of a major slowdown. Luxury brands that once wanted to be associated with Marjorie's high fashion image are now moving in the opposite direction because they do not want to be linked to a drug kingpin's past. Katt is laughing at the irony of it all, saying that the very image Marjorie worked so hard to build is now the cage that is trapping her in a cycle of public shame. We are hearing from imaginary sources that Steve is looking into an exit strategy of his own, but he is finding out that the strings Marjorie has on him are tied a lot tighter than he realized. The narrative is that he is stuck between a rock and a hard place where he has to choose between his marriage and his remaining legacy. Katt is making pop culture references to the fall of Rome, saying that the fire has started and Steve is just standing there with a glass of water trying to put out a volcano. The fallout is also affecting the next generation, as Lori Harvey's brand is reportedly taking a massive hit from the association with these investigative findings. The narrative of her being a strategic socialite is becoming a liability rather than an asset as the public starts to view her through the lens of her mother's alleged coaching. Katt is sarcastically questioning if the next relationship Lori enters will be enough to distract the world from the fact that her family empire is currently under siege. There is a real sense of anticipation for a major move from the Harveys, like a surprise divorce filing or a public confession, but Katt says they are too proud to ever admit they were wrong. He is predicting that they will go down with the ship while still trying to sell the world a version of happiness that nobody believes in anymore. This tension is what keeps the audience hooked because we are waiting for the final breaking point that changes everything forever. The investigative findings suggest that Steve's legal team is working overtime to send cease and desist letters to anyone who even mentions Katt's name in relation to the Harveys. But as Katt pointed out, you cannot sue the truth and you cannot stop the internet once it has decided to look for its own answers. The more they try to suppress the information, the louder it gets, and the more people start to believe that Katt is the only one telling the truth in a city full of liars. Fallout from this scandal is also hitting the comedy circuit, where other comedians are being forced to take sides in the battle between Steve and Katt. Most are staying quiet because they are afraid of the power the Harveys still hold, but the silence is telling a story of its own. Katt is calling them all out for being cowards, while he stands alone on the front lines taking all the heat to make sure the message gets through to the people who really matter. As the financial crisis looms, some reports suggest that the Harveys are already liquidating some of their smaller assets to stay ahead of the potential legal fees. This is a classic sign of an empire in retreat, and Katt is not letting them go quietly into the night. He is using every show and every appearance to remind the world that the man who told you to act like a lady is currently being handled by a woman who allegedly knows more about the streets than she does about the church. The final consequences of this mess are likely to be seen in the history books rather than just the gossip columns. Katt Williams has successfully shifted the focus of celebrity culture from mindless consumption to critical investigation. He has shown that no matter how much money you have or how many television shows you host, you can never truly run away from where you started. The Harveys are the ultimate example of what happens when you try to build a mansion on a foundation of secrets.